So we've been talking about California oil refineries shutting down because with all the regulation that Governor Gavin Newsom is putting in place, refineries are like, ooh, yeah, this isn't working out so well. I think we're going to dip on out. We're going to explore all of our options, including selling that bad boy refinery. Yeah. And as you do so, you shrink the supply of refined products and your price goes up. This is another angle that we're covering today. This is yet another way that California Democrats are going to increase the price of gasoline in California. Let's get into it. Here we go. So California has the highest, and thank you for all of you who told me how much gas was in your location in California. I got a wide range of prices, right? California has the highest gas prices in the continental United States, but they are set to rise by at least 50 cents a gallon in 2025, thanks entirely to new regulations approved by the Democratic Party that controls the state. Isn't that great? Isn't that something special? You guys get more taxes. Well, I mean, you need more taxes because you need more social programs to hand away all your hard-earned money. I mean, you just need them. Now, that's one of the things here in my state of Washington, where I'm looking at, retirement at some point in time. I don't know when that'll be, way down the road. I'm going to keep podcasting though, but retiring from the real estate industry. And Washington is just a mini version of California. And at some point in time, Washington will have to have an income tax because of all the ridiculous social programs that we do here in this state. Give you this, give you that, give you everything. That's got to get paid by something. And if you don't have a state income tax, what are you even doing if you're a Democrat state? That's why everybody's moving from big Democrat-run states to, Texas, Florida, Idaho. These regulations may be intended to reduce carbon emissions, but thanks to the refusal of California drivers to give up their increasingly expensive cars, importing fuel into the state will most likely raise overall emissions. You know what I find really funny is that as we're being pushed more and more to electric cars, which cars are, the biggest sellers? They're not even cars. They're trucks and SUVs. That's what Americans want. We want to be able to drive the whole family, do the grocery store shopping, go camping, put the dog in the back, have a rooftop rack full of camping gear, all at the same time, right? And you can't do that in a Prius. Sorry, folks, just can't do that. On November 8th, 3 days after the election day, California Air Resources Board, that sounds like a fantastic board. California Air Resources Board, a notionally independent agency, whose appointees are controlled by the Democratic Party, is set to vote on stringent new fuel standards and apply them next year. CARB estimated this year that regulations similar to the ones being voted on Friday would raise the price of gas by 47 cents. A gallon in 2025. The University of Pennsylvania's Kleinman Center for Energy Policy did its own analysis of CARB's new regulations and found that a price hike of 65 cents per gallon was more likely. Ooh. So any which way, and low end, you look at 25 or 50 cents, 65 cents in the high end. Even if it's a quarter, that's a quarter a gallon, right? Hey, I'm not telling you anything new, right? It's more money because you're already paying top dollar for your gasoline. The backlash against these estimates earlier in the year was so strong that CARB said it would reconsider the new standard, which it did before re-releasing basically the same regulation. Hey, second time round, maybe they won't notice. It's the same damn thing. Here you go. We switched it all up and this is new and this is better. Can you guys work with it this time? Okay. Right? This time, instead of estimating how much the new regulations would raise prices for consumers, CARB claimed that it had simply lost the ability to determine how much its regulations would affect prices. How much is this going to cost us? These regulations, how much is this going to cost us? Don't know. We simply don't know. I mean, no idea. It's not reasonable for us to know, how much this would really cost. But this is really critical to the environment. I don't expect them to, CARB Executive Officer Stephen Cliff told reporters. There will be additional impacts to costs to refiners, but he said he doesn't think those costs will be passed on to consumers. Have I heard that before from my governor here? Yeah, it didn't work out well. Washington State has some of the most expensive gasoline as well. So we're right there with you on California, folks. If only that were true, that those costs will be not passed on to consumers. Keep in mind that new CARB standards are on top of new costs inflicted on refineries by Governor Gavin Newsom's anti-price gouging legislation. That's what we've been covering here on News for Reasonable People, which forces refineries in the state to build new storage facilities to hold reserve gasoline in case refinery maintenance disrupts supplies. So Newsom basically said, going to make you build extra capacity to hold all this refined oil, gasoline, whatever it is, basically gasoline. Going to need you to hold more of that because when we have these fluctuations in supply, well, the consumer ends up paying for all that. Well, yeah, it's called demand and supply, you knucklehead. But Gavin Newsom is trying to eliminate that. And in the meantime, what he's doing is we've got probably 3 refineries that are going to go away that account for 22% of the refined oil, in the state of California products. Hey, if you love this channel, if you love this content, we've got a private channel. It's called reasonabletv.com. It's a way that you can support if that's your thing. Here's a piece of content that I think you need to have in your life. Portland's homeless encampment sheriff was murdered a while ago. Sheriff of Portland homeless encampment stabbed in the neck and murdered. Now, clearly that's a little too violent for some other platforms. That's why we talk about it over there. How much is it going to cost you? Well, I've dropped the price down to $3.99 a month if you do it monthly. And then under that, $40 a year. So, cost of dinner for 2 people with no drinks or less than the cost of 1 latte at Starbucks. You can do that. All right. Thanks in advance. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Do you think it might be a little bit more expensive bringing in reserves from, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, Ecuador, Colombia, than drilling in California? I mean, just the whole thing is so convoluted. Problem is that higher costs are prompting oil companies to shut down refineries. Phillips 66 is closing its Carson refinery. We talked about that. And since no sensible person would build a new oil refinery in California, it means California will have to import gasoline instead. Most states pipe in extra gasoline whenever there is a shortage, but not California. Its draconian environmental laws mean that there are no gas pipelines into the state, nor any pipelines connecting the northern and southern gas markets. And you know what? It's not just California that's impacted. Adjoining states, Nevada brings in a bunch of gasoline from California. Nearby states, I mean, you're going to take whatever California produces and say, hey, thanks, guys. That's as cheap as, relatively they're going to get because of where they are geographically with California. With gas refineries in California down to 8 from 11 5 years ago, imports from overseas are set to more than double from 8% of the total used to 17% next year. All right, so double your imports from overseas. Now, I'm no economist. I am no genius when it comes to that type of thing. But if you are bringing in more than double what you used to from outside the country, how do you think that's going to go? Do you think that's going to be cheaper? Do you think it's going to be more expensive? I'll let you decide. I'll give you a hint. It's not a real tough one to figure out, right? California Democrats may pat themselves on the back for reducing carbon emissions by getting rid of refineries, but California drivers are not abandoning their gas-powered cars as fast as Democrats would like. I mean, the share of electric vehicles is pretty minimal, isn't it? And the power grid, it just doesn't have the ability if we switched over all electric today, you'd have massive portions of the economy just standing still because you wouldn't have the ability to do what you need to do with all electric. It's just not there. We're not there yet. But hey, you know what? Go ahead and say 2035, whatever it is. Yep. No more gas-powered cars are going to be coming out of our state. There are still more than 25 million such vehicles registered in the state, 17 times the number of electric vehicles. Yeah, I mean, it's wildly upside down, right? The oil must come from somewhere, and that somewhere is Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately for environmentalists, the tankers shipping oil from the Middle East to California use a heavy fuel oil that emits lots of carbon. So in doing so, you have created more environmental impact. Nice going, guys. 2 thumbs up. Well done. When California Democrats calculated carbon emissions cut by ridding the state of refineries, they did not add the emissions from fuel tankers. Huh. That's a shocker. Weird how that works, right? The more I get into all this environmental crap, the less likely I am to think that any of this really makes any sense. Like on a logical, reasonable type standard. I think some things can be cleaned up. Yeah. Do I want to see absolute garbage dumped into the ocean? No. But we're not talking about that, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about drill, baby, drill. Right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. Domestic production of gasoline. California could scrap its oppressive refinery regulations and keep more of them open. It could also reform its permitting process and build gas pipelines into the state. Good Lord, they're not doing any of that. But California is also just sitting in the nation's 6th largest oil reserves. It does not need to import oil from Saudi Arabia. It just needs to pump it out from under Bakersfield. It would cut carbon emissions from oil tankers and avoid oil tanker spills. But such common sense solutions would never be allowed while the state is controlled by the Democratic Party. That's the bottom line. You've got Democrats running the state. And how is that working out? How is that working out? Let me ask you a question. Are more people moving into California, or is there significant out migration? Interesting. One of the other topics that I covered today was how the housing supply has actually gotten better, but not for the reason you think. I'm not going to record it, but the bottom line was a lot of people are moving away from expensive areas in Democrat-run states, and they're moving to areas that are more affordable, like Texas and Florida, where they don't have as much of a housing supply issue. So in the areas where housing is really, really in demand, you're seeing an exodus from those areas to places where they've got more. So it's just going to be a matter of time till that, that little dip comes back, because you don't have enough housing throughout the United States. And overregulation in a state like California is partially to do with some of what you've got going on with that storyline. The gasoline in California, that is truly on the Democrat politicians in the state of California. They're just running the state into the ground. They're trying to convince everybody that they're doing the right thing, and that, hey, you know what? Go California. You know what I mean? You always hear that from the political leaders. And then all the comments that you guys place are, yeah, got out of California 25 years ago, never looked back. It's been great. Been smooth sailing since. Moved to Texas. So many of those comments. So, yeah, this should be interesting. Californians, your gas is going up. That sucks. All right. That's all I got for you in this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.